Indian Councils Act of 1892. By this time, the Congress had come into existence. Indian National Congress, 1885. Alan Octavian Hume. We will not go into details now. I am just putting a signal to you. There's a big change in the Indian freedom struggle now. A political party, a party which would lay stress on Indian freedom movement came into existence. So Indian Councils Act of 1892, it's a key feature, a key act. It further extended the participation of Indians in the legislative bodies. In the legislative bodies of the British, Indians were given participation. They were permitted to participate in the legislative bodies. Legislative Council's authority. What is Legislative Council? One that makes laws. One that makes laws is called as Legislative Council. Its authority was enhanced. A greater authority was given. Not just to recommend. It has to pass bills, make them into laws, allow discussion on budget related issues. The expenditure of the year of the British administration year, it has to be accounted for, worked out. So allowed discussion on budget related issues too. Provision to question the government on public issues by serving a 6 days notice. So the Legislative Council can give a 6 days notice, it can serve and it can question the government on public issues. Now we come to 1900 Act. 1900 Act, it is known as Minto-Marley Reforms Act. Minto-Marley Reforms Act, it is known as Indian Councils Act of 1909. You have entered the 20th century now. Then Minto was the Viceroy. Lord Minto, he was the Viceroy. And Lord Marley, he was the Secretary of State. That's why the Indian Councils Act was called as the Minto-Marley Reforms Act, wherein the names of both the Viceroy and the Secretary of State are included in the nomenclature of the Act. This Act was used to divide and rule India. This is what I said. The British were very cunning. The outer appearance looks to be very calm. They always used to show off themselves as somebody, as a government who are interested in the Indians. But the key nature was different. Minto-Marley Reforms Act, it aimed at internally, it aimed at dividing the India and ruling it. Yes, they were feeling that Indians are going strong day by day. Our days are numbered here. Let's divide India and rule. So, the number of central legislative members, number of members in the central legislature was increased to 60 from 16. 60 from 16. It was 16 earlier, now it became 60. The number of regional council members was also increased. There were two legislatures. One is the central legislature, the other is the state legislature. The central legislature is the top one, like the Indian Parliament. And each state, each region had its state council. Now representation of the regional council It was by way of elections for the first time. An element of democracy gets in. But again, it is not universal empowerment to vote. It was only for a few rich who were paying taxes to the British government, and there were lots of commissions and omissions there. We will not go into those things. To provide separate representation, you see, divide and rule, I said. Separate representation to Muslims. A separate electoral college was created. See here, they wanted to sow the seed of separation between the Muslims and Hindus this way. So, a separate electoral college was created by them. This is why, when I started with subsection, I said the objective was to divide and rule India. Okay, we move on to the next. Government of India Act 1919. 1919, Government of India Act. 20th century, lot of changes are taking place. Riots everywhere. Indians are asserting their demands. Leaders are coming up. Political leaders. Awareness is building up. Congress leaders used to go around the country, volunteer themselves in enriching the political inbuilt of the Indians, telling these Britishers are foreign to us. They don't have a right to rule. Today or tomorrow we have to ask them to step out, vacate this place. We should rule. So the idea of Swarajya, everything was all getting built up. The Gandhi wave is sweeping the country now. Okay, let's see what are the various aspects of Government of India Act of 1919. But here too, the British cannot act in an authoritarian way on Indians, because the First World War was just over. 1914 to 1918 was the First World War. And in the First World War, when the British were in great danger, their very existence had come under question. The Indians had univocally supported the British. Lots of youth from India went to England and fought for the British. And ultimately, the British won the war. So, when it comes to the freedom struggle or the relations between the British and the Indians, our freedom struggle moved on a totally different path. It's not that we hated the British. All the time we had a very good bridge wherein we used to discuss and debate with them on various issues and assert the right for freedom. We were demanding in such a way they were finding it very difficult to give a convenient answer to us. So since Indians took part in the First World War, Lord Montague, the then Secretary of State, favored greater representation to Indians in the matter of administration. Montague said, yes, you have helped us in the First World War. We know it. We are grateful to you. So, your representation we will enhance. Representation of Indians we will enhance. Some incentive has to be shown. Their gratefulness they have to express. So, he favored greater representation to Indians in the matter of administration. The Viceroy then was Chelmsford. The Secretary of State had been Montague. So, this Government of India Act of 1919 was not known as Montague-Chelmsford Reforms Act. As we spoke of Minto-Marley reforms then, this is Montague-Chelmsford Reforms Act. It was 1917 reformative measures were taken up. The Viceroy Lord Chelmsford declared various reformative measures in 1917. Government of India Act came into existence in 1919. So Government of India Act is called as now, to recognize them, Montague-Chelmsford Reforms Act. What are the major aspects of this act? They are act formulated bicameral legislative body. Bicameral. Camera is, you know, camera, window. It's a window from where you get the visual picture. It is the camera. Indian Parliament is bicameral. If I explain, you understand very well. It is not one house. In the Indian Parliament, you have two houses. The lower house, the upper house. The Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. There are two houses. Bi means two. These two houses together constitute the Indian Parliament. In the same lines, the act formulated a bicameral legislative body with a lower house and an upper house. Diarchy was allowed at regional government level. What do you mean by diarchy? Administration is controlled at 2 points. On one side, you had the council members, British council members. On the other side, you had ministers. Ministers controlled from one angle, the council members controlled from the other angle, and the various powers were divided among them. This is called as diarchy. Even at the time of Plassey War, when you studied the British history there, you came across diarchy there. A High Commissioner was appointed for India. You understand how significant things are. State Secretary is there, now a High Commissioner is also appointed. Indian matters, political matters, economic matters are becoming more and more complex. A High Commissioner was appointed. They promised us, the British promised us to improve the local self-government. Swarajya, Gandhiji repeatedly spoke of Swarajya. Empower us, give us powers. At the lower level, at least, we will rule ourselves. Thereby, at the panchayat level, when you start, automatically the Indians learn a lot. They learn a lot as to how they should govern. So, local self-government, they said they will improve it. Provincial budget was separated from central budget. So far, there had been only one British budget for India, for the whole of India. Now it was divided into two. One central budget, the other one provincial budget. Provinces had separate budgets. Separate electoral college for Muslims, Sikhs, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. Mischiefs were being played. This separated us. Never allowed different fragments to come together and think about the national progress. Divide India. By dividing India, you will have a safe move. You will be able to rule India well. Divide the enemy. Enemy should not be able to act in unison. So that was the idea the British had. So this Montague-Chelmsford Act, you see it. Montague-Chelmsford Act, you see it as an act to divide and rule India on one side. On the other side, there was a political viewpoint to improve the plight of Indians. So that was the act of 1919. Now we come to 1935. Government of India Act 1935. Now this act is considered as the basis of the Indian Constitution. Today, the constitution what we have of British India actually had birth in the Government of India Act of 1935. So we call this act as the base of the Indian constitution. A very key point. Why do I say that? Or why do you historians say that? We will come to that. The report submitted under the leadership of Motilal Nehru was instrumental in the formation of this act. As the 1935 Act was given shape, suggestions were taken by the British government based on the report submitted by the committee under the leadership of Motilal Nehru, father of the first Premier of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. The Act allowed the formation of a fully responsible government by Indians. They said, don't hurry up. Ultimately, we will allow you to rule yourselves. You will get a fully responsible government, that too by Indians. Indians will rule their own country. We will provide for that. The Act was applicable to the Indian principalities as well as the British India regions. So this Act was not only for the British Empire. There were a lot of Indian principalities within the country which were under the supreme power of the British. Their case was also considered. British India regions, their welfare was also considered. The rule of those British India regions was also a part of it. So Act was applicable to the regions which were directly under the control of the British and regions which were called as principalities being run by the Indian kings under the control of the British. A federal system of Indian principalities, British governed regions and dominion states. Dominion states were also there, totally independent, but ultimately they have to get the approval of the British whenever they pass a legal act. Whenever they make any serious change in their dominion, they have to take permission from the top. Top is the British government. Dominion status it is called as. Today, many countries in the world have a dominion status. Canada is an independent country, but not a republic like India. Why? The supreme head of Canada is the Queen of Britain. She won't rule, she won't administer, but every act that the Canadian Parliament passes has to go for the final signature to the Queen of England. That's what we say. Canada has a dominion status. It is an independent country. Nominally, for name's sake, Queen is the head. But India doesn't have a dominion status now. We are an independent country. We have our own president. President is the head of this country. Our president is not under any foreign power. He is independent. That's why we call Republic of India. Republic means absolutely sovereign. Okay, we get back to this part only to explain that word I told you. So a federal system came in India. Federal system means you have the central leadership, parliament is there, and under that their lower house, upper house you have bicameral system, and at the regional level you have the provincial system, provincial assemblies are there. All these together, the union gets formed. It's a federal structure ultimately. Reserve Bank of India was established. Somebody asks you, when did the Reserve Bank of India come into existence? Usually ask students, they say 1947 sir, 48 sir, 49. Somewhere after 47. No, Reserve Bank of India was established in 1935. It's a long history. Diarchy was established at the center. 2-point administration but by the Indian representatives on one hand, on the other side the councillors, British councillors. So from 2 points the Indian administration was getting carried on. So that's diarchy. Then diarchy was cancelled at the regional level. At the regional level too, upper house and lower house were there. That was cancelled. Only one house now. At the regional level, only one house. Diarchy at the center. There you will have the councillors and the ministers to control. The federal court was established. Supreme Court with absolute powers. The federal court for, see, in the provinces, if somebody is not happy with the judgment given, they had the permission to go to the federal court. So the federal court, the top court, was established for the entire British Empire. All these acts stress on the aspirations of Indians for self-rule. You see, at every level, you see, Indians had been stressing for self-rule. Motilal Nehru too, in his recommendations to the British government, he stressed on self-rule for Indians. That is what you find in this 1835 Act. Lot of provisions were given wherein Indians will be able to rule their country themselves. So we were closer and closer, we are getting closer and closer to the final act of declaration of independence to the country. At least at the horizon we have started seeing that India would become a free country over a decade or two. The British were not totally turning down the demands put forth by Indians. They were signaling that we will give you independence. It's only a matter of time. Things are decided. Thank you.